Okay. So as a young girl, I was very certain about two things. One of those things was I've always dreamed of being an Irish fashion designer one day. I remember being a young girl and being like, how do you become a fashion designer? Is that a real job? That was always one thing I was for sure certain since I was this size. The other thing I knew for sure was that I had an obsession with nature. I was always outdoors, always in nature, always immersed in nature. I always remember my favourite time of the year being summers, because we used to spend all of our time in County Clare and Kilkee, if any of you know it. And I just remember spending all my times in the sea outside, and I always had a graw for nature. And that was really, as a young girl, I really had those two obsessions. From that, I went to school in Limerick School of Art and Design, so that was really my other dream. It was really to become a fashion designer. Where do I go to college? So I studied in Limerick School of Art and Design. I then went and worked with Marc Jacobs in New York, which was the most incredible experience. And I really got to know the industry. So I was working in New York, I was working in Paris, and that's actually really where I started to understand the real industry, the real impacts of what's happening. And for those of you who may not know, the fashion industry is the third biggest polluter behind the oil and agri industry. And figuring this out, with all my inspiration coming from nature, all my love for nature and my love for fashion, I knew I had to make change. And that's when I set up my brand in 2019, Aoife Mc Namara. And I'm going to get into that in a few more slides, but I really want to talk about the issues of the fashion industry first. Here you can see me standing at Dandora landfill. Over 900 million tonnes of waste come into Dandora landfill yearly, and 450 million of them are considered worthless. So Dandora landfill is in Kenya, in Africa, and we're currently shooting a documentary all around the impacts that the fast fashion industry has had. And for me, I wanted to really talk about this, but I wanted to witness it firsthand. I was like, there's no point in me talking about it here in Ireland when we don't have this in front of us. I wanted to go to Africa and really see firsthand what was happening. So we visited the landfill, and I remember speaking to people on the landfill, and one of the ladies, she was there since she was 3 years old, and this was her second home. This is where she met her money. She didn't know any different. And I remember asking her, what is it that we could do, to help you? And all she was asking for was better clothes that she could wear for picking, and better stuff coming in that they could sell. And I also went to Gukumba market, so that's one of the biggest second-hand markets in the world. So that's where all the clothes come in on bales from our charity shops. So say we send away a fast fashion garment or any garment to a second-hand shop that you may not want anymore. You're like, okay, it'll have a second life. But a lot of this, if you don't want it, if you consider it worthless, then the other people, they're going to consider it worthless as well when it gets into Africa. And I actually met with the buyers, and it was really interesting to just hear, how they purchase these garments, and they look through every detail of them. If there's a little rip on them, they can't sell them, they don't want them. And majority of those garments that I was looking at were all fast fashion brands. The garments they didn't want, the garments that we didn't want, that were the throwaway fashions that we got for one night out, they were the garments they didn't want either, and they're ending up then in the landfill. And I suppose I really want to talk about the differences between fast and slow fashion. So here you can see earth-made, and then you have a man-made fibre. So I love to really break this into interconnected and disconnected. So earth-made fibres, they're Irish wools, they're Irish linens, they're natural biodegradable fibres, they're grown from our soil. Man-made fibres, polyesters, is what 80% of the fashion industry is actually using. So that's actually a chemical process. So you can see here, it's actually a fossil fuel extraction, which we're putting on our skin. And I think a lot of people forget about what a polyester garment is actually made of. And you can see here the process of a fast fashion cycle. It's all about mass production, getting as many styles in as they can. This is where the idea of trends come in, because they wanted people to consume more, consume. Whereas slow fashion, in contrast to that, is what me as a designer, I suppose, really wanted to become, was a slow fashion designer. And considering every single stitch detail I did, every single fabric that I chose. And for me, that process is so important to really bring it back to an interconnected process. Whereas a disconnected process, a lot of those garments, if you do consider them worthless, as I mentioned, they will end up in places like Dandora in landfills. So in 2019, I set up my fashion brand, Aoife Mc Namara. And Aoife Mc Namara, what we do is we really use ethical and handmade garments. And for me, it was all about creating garments that are interconnected, that when I'm designing with a love for nature. I'm designing with Ireland at the heart of it. I remember being abroad, and when I came home, I really had a love for Ireland. I think it's so common, you know, so many Irish, when we travel abroad to Australia or wherever, you know, we nearly miss the Irishness, we miss Ireland. And for me, that was a really big thing. So when I was, after coming home from Paris and New York, I really had that graw for Ireland, that love for Ireland, and that's how I designed. So you can see here, the primrose, that's actually what my suit is inspired by tonight, the primrose flowers. So I get all my inspiration from mainly the Burn in County Clare, one of our most biodiverse ecosystems. And you can also see here the clints and grikes in the Burn. There's grass coming up through the rocks. So you can see here the blazer, they have the light green stripes, which is the grass coming up through the rocks. So you can see all my inspiration is very interconnected with nature and my love for nature, and I suppose being able to showcase that through design is so important to me. But there was one thing that I felt I was missing from my fashion brand. You know, I was creating these beautiful, sustainable garments, you know, 2 years into business, but I felt like I was missing the link of inspiring or educating people on why they should actually care to buy sustainable garments. Why does it matter? You know, why should I spend way more money on buying this sustainable garment when I can buy a fast fashion garment and throw it out? And for me, that's really when I figured out it needs to be more interconnected, what I do. I need to have, you know, more of an educational message and to inspire more. And I remember reading this quote by a Buddhist monk, and it was, "Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper." The cloud is the essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not there, the sheet of paper cannot be there either. And if you just think about that quote for a second, we're so interconnected with nature. Every single thing we do, every single thing we use, but yet we harm it daily. You know, we're so disconnected from nature and how we treat it and how we care for it, that it's separate to us, whereas it's not. You know, it's something bigger, and that's a huge part of what I'm trying to bring through as a fashion designer. You know, how can I use this interconnectedness through my design process? And that's when I come up with interconnected design. So for me, interconnected design, it's all about starting in nature and ending in nature. So you can see here, I'm starting with my beautiful inspiration in the Burn, all around Ireland. I'm then looking at innovation, and this is a really important step that I just brought through to what I'm doing. So innovation through design is so incredibly important to me. So I'm working with Irish scientists currently to develop a seaweed textile, and then working with farmers to use more Irish wool. So it's really looking at, okay, what do we have here in Ireland that we can actually use instead of using these polyesters, these man-made fibres? What can we look to right in front of us that are byproducts of the agri-industry, byproducts of the food industry, and look at them and use them? So this is a huge passion point and really important, I think, point going forward in designers' process, and it's really one of the first stages that we should all be looking at. I'm then looking at certifications. So I'm just after getting my B Corp certification. I'm the first Irish B Corp certified fashion brand. And for me, the reason I wanted to get it was really to, you know, I was looking at all these certifications, and some of them were so easy to get. They were like, yeah, perfect, here you go, you pay this amount of money and it's yours. And that wasn't what it was about for me. I wanted something challenging, I wanted something hard, I wanted something that I could actually work towards getting, that actually, when I had it, I was like, yes, I'm taking sustainability seriously, and I wanted, you know, to look into that. And the B Corp certification was the hardest to get. It took us a full year. They dive into every single aspect of your business. It's not just about fashion, it's about your community, your employers, your customers, you know, your supply chain. And for me, that's what it's all about. You know, sustainability, it's not just one thing. You know, it's integrated, interconnected through every single process that I do within my design. So for me, those certifications are so incredibly important. I then opened my first store. So again, it's sort of back to, you know, we're so used to digital these days. We're so used to everything being on our phones, you know, clicking and buying. And for me, coming back to being in person was magical. I remember, you know, opening my first store, and it was actually a beautiful thatched cottage in the Dare village in County Limerick. I grew up 5 minutes away from it. I remember thinking as a young girl, I was like, wow, imagine actually owning this one day. And yeah, so it is now our cottage in the Dare village. And for me, having that store, you know, opened so many other doors. We were able to have our conscious movement morning. So for me, one element, again, back to that, you know, 2 years in business, I was creating these designs, and then I felt like I really wanted to connect with people more. I really wanted to inspire people more, and that's when I started doing my conscious movement mornings, because I feel like to be a conscious consumer, it actually starts from within. You have to have a conscious mindset, and that's really how I think you're actually going to consciously consume beautiful, sustainable garments. And you know, it's sort of like slow food. That's how I always compare, you know, fast and slow fashion. Once you're consciously aware of the impacts that that food is going to have on you, you're more aware to buy the better produced, the better quality stuff. So for me, having these retreats was so incredibly important. So they're called the rewilding retreats, and I think this was the missing link that I was always missing as a designer, was, you know, being face to face with, you know, my customers and actually educating them on, inspiring them, not even educating, but showcasing them what's actually happening in the world, and also what can you do. So we do learn to sew workshops, even if it's like a little rip on your jacket, you can learn to stitch it up. You know, and then it's creating that conscious mindset, that love for nature. Again, that was really, really important to me as a designer. So that was really how I brought through the interconnected design process in a world where we are so disconnected. And I'm going to show you a video now, and this is just going to give you a bit more, I suppose, detail into my design process. So this one was all inspired by the Burn in County Clare, where I'm living, and really, for me, storytelling is such an important part of what I do as a creative. If there's any creatives in the room, you'll understand storytelling is one of the most important parts of the design process, and how you can tell that story to someone. And for me, I'm always trying to bring through that educational message through everything I do. So this is a poem I wrote, and I have the incredible Emma Debris. So Emma, you know, when I'm looking at faces, I'm not just looking at the next supermodel. I'm looking at people that really align with my brand and who really also represent what I represent as a brand. So she's a sustainability advocate, and she really resembles everything I stand for. So she's the face of our campaign. So I'm going to showcase this video to you now.
Salty sandy hair, a tailor folds, coral lit tapestry, the sunrise molds. Hugo's buns and strawberry sweet, icy swims, smiles wide, heart's rhythms beat, earthy warm, ripened grasses scent, harvest's time essence, nature's consent, adventures wild around Ireland's shore, out for one coming home at 4, surfing till skin turns blue, laughs, echoes, 99s with confetti's view, burns wildflowers, bold and bright, sandy toes and fading light, Guinness pints creamy, depth to explore, in the Atlantic's green, secrets to keep, picnics as the sun dips low, nature's embrace in sunset's glow. But beneath beauty, truth cries out, rising seas, storm, nature's doubt. We've lost our connection, our sacred role. In life stands the heart and the soul. Time to lift the veil, remember the past, the island's spirit, vibrant and vast. Awaken to the land, the language, the lore. Irish soul stirring, yearning for more. Now, the question arises, as feminine energy gently surprises, can we reconnect, remember, reclaim Ireland's essence, its ancient name? For in bogs, rivers, mountains, hills, lies the key to stories yet untold. Time to awaken, to seek and find the wisdom of ages in heart and mind.
So I think you can just see a bit of how my brain works, and the importance also of this connection to Ireland, this connection of showcasing the beauty of Ireland. It's such a huge passion point for me as a designer, but I think it's so important for all of us, you know, to cherish Ireland, cherish our heritage, and also bring forward with that sustainability and caring for our planet. So for me, this idea of interconnectedness is so important going forward as a designer for me in a world where we're so disconnected. And really, I suppose what I'd love for you to take from tonight is, can you be that bit more conscious, that bit more connected to nature, but that bit more thoughtful when you're shopping with your shopping habits? Because I think one thing we all forget is, we do have a power to vote with our purchase, and sometimes we feel that we're so disconnected from what these brands are selling, but really the brands are going where the money is going. So we do really have that chance to vote with our purchases. So thank you so much for tonight.